What's going on, everybody? It's Jelly J NBA back with another video, and today we're going to be ranking all 30 starting small forwards using a tier maker. Now, I've already ranked point guards and shooting guards. I'll leave a link to both of those videos in the description below. Once again, shout out my guy Tucker at Sporting Logically for this video idea. But before we get started, I just want to thank you guys for your continued support on this channel. And if you are new here and enjoy the NBA, consider subscribing. I upload basically every day. Now let's get right into the video. All right, here we are, guys. We're at the tier maker. Before I just start throwing guys into tiers, I want to explain for anybody who has not watched the other videos of this series, the logic that I put for guys going into certain tiers, and then also for duplicates. So guys like Duncan Robinson, he was in the shooting guard video. Caris LeVert was in the shooting guard video. LeBron was in the point guard video. The reason why you don't see Kevin Durant here is because I'm basing this off of the 2019-2020 season, which Durant did not play. So that's why he's not here. But as for the tiers, we have Superstar. That is, a tier that I view guys clearly top 10 players in the league, generational talents. All NBA is a step below that. For All-Star, I have like a high-end All-Star closer to All NBA, and then a low-end All-Star closer to starter. Same thing for starter. I have a high-end starter and a low-end starter closer to bench. Bench is guys that can be rotational pieces, but not really guys that you want starting on your team if you're competing for a championship. And then bum kind of speaks for itself. So we're going to start with a guy in Brandon Ingram who's having a great season in New Orleans in his first year there. And I went and threw him in the All-Star category. I feel like he's finally becoming a guy that everybody projected him as coming out. Someone that can just absolutely score the ball. And he's become a real good fit there with Zion and Lonzo and that core they're building down there. Harrison Barnes. I went and threw him in the starter category. I think he's still sufficient enough to be a solid starter on your team. He's a guy that's going to, have the ability to hit the three and play some defense, so that's why I threw him in starter. Trevor Ariza is a nice bench piece at this point in his career. He's not really on that starter tier anymore, so that's why I threw him there. He's still a guy that, a lot of championship teams could use just because of his ability to, once again, play defense and hit the three. Caris LeVert, I put in starter for the shooting guard position. He's going to stay in starter for this position as well. He's a guy that has very much impressed me coming off multiple injuries, so that's why he's there. Andrew Wiggins, he's very interesting. It was between high-end starter for me and low-end all-star. I went and threw him in starter just because I really don't know what he brings outside of scoring. Now, it'll be very, very interesting to see how playing with a championship team with guys like Steph, Clay, Draymond changes his approach to the game. I know they're going to ask him to play a lot of hard defense, since he plays the small forward, a position that the NBA pretty much revolves around now. You look around the league, you got guys like LeBron, Kawhi, KD coming back. He's going to be asked to guard those guys. So I'm very, very interested to see how that changes his approach to the game, and maybe he can mold his game into more of a well-balanced game. Cedi Osman is a guy that got a lot of hype the year after LeBron left. He just went in the bench tier for me, and simply because of this. If you're a championship team, you really, really, really don't want Cedi Osman to be your starting small forward. So that's why I went in there. That's some logic that I use a lot for guys that went in the bench tier, is guys that are very good rotational pieces that a championship team would love to have come off the bench for them, but guys that you really don't want starting for you if you're a championship team. Luke Nitzdorf, same thing. He just went in the bench tier for me. He's a young guy, hasn't really shown me enough yet. That's why he went there. DeAndre Hunter, he's a rookie who was picked very high. I was very high on him. He's probably my favorite player still from last year's draft class. But I went and threw him in the bench. Now, he's probably a high tier bench, very close to starter. But the reason why I went in here is he just hasn't shown me enough yet. Obviously, we know his ability to play defense and hit the three. But outside of that, we don't really know what he is yet. So that's why I threw him in bench. That speaks for itself. That speaks for itself. On to Joe Ingles. That's a guy that's a solid starter. He's in the tier with these guys. A guy that, if you're competing for a championship, he could be your starting small forward. Josh Okogie, guy that plays very good defense, but outside of that, I really don't know what he brings to your team. He can kind of shoot, but not really, so that's why I threw him in the bench tier. Kawhi Leonard, that speaks for itself. Chris Middleton. Now, Chris Middleton, him and Brandon Ingram are probably the two closest we have to all NBA. Went in through Middleton and All-Star, though, just because basically the perfect guy around Giannis. Now, do I think Brandon Ingram is somebody that can lead his team and be an all-NBA type of guy? Yes, potentially. Do I see that same thing with Chris Middleton? No. So that's why I put him in All-Star, but he's the guy that Milwaukee needs next to Giannis. He's the perfect play type around him, and he deserved All-Star for me for that. Kyle Anderson, he's a guy that played in San Antonio, now on to Memphis. He went in the bench tier for me, just simply somebody that you don't want being your starting small forward if you're competing for a championship. Mikal Bridges, another, young guy who really hasn't shown us a lot to this point. I think he could be on the low low end of starter or very much high end of bench. I went and put him on the high end of bench just because we know he can play defense. He just has to show us a little bit more consistency shooting wise, but I think he definitely can move up with more growth. That speaks for itself. And then we have Miles Bridges. This was an interesting one. You know, I think he could go high end bench or low end starter. I put him in starter just because I really liked what I saw out of him this year. He's kind of growing into a player that we really didn't see. He came into the league as like a real athletic guy, which he still is, but he's really developed his game and grown it for sure. So that's why I went in starter for me. Eric Gordon, same thing. High end bench, low end starter. It was starter for me simply because of his ability to shoot and defend. And that is what so many teams need now, today's NBA. You know, if you're on a championship team and you need a starting small forward, I wouldn't mind a guy like Aaron Gordon just because of his ability to shoot and defend. Mo Harkless went in bench for me. I think that's pretty simple. Just a guy that you really don't want to be your starting small forward on a championship team. OG Anunoby, he actually went in starter for me. Another guy who's just grown his game, came into the league as just like a long, raw, athletic guy. Now can be a great 3-and-D piece and a guy that definitely fits the modern NBA. DeMar DeRozan, it was between high-end starters on the same tier with Wiggins or all-star for me. I threw him in starter just because his ability to not shoot the 3 ball in such an important era of the NBA just hurts him for me. He shoots 26% from 3 this year. Just a guy that he just doesn't try and shoot more 3s. I don't know what it is. His ability to not shoot the 3 in the modern NBA put him in starter for me. Now I know he's probably the most high-end starter we have here. Otto Porter, just another guy that, you know, kind of roams in this area between bench and starter. I threw him in starter just because he's still a guy that can give you good minutes, that can play good defense for you. Jason Tatum. Now, a lot of people have hyped this kid up ever since he came into the league, but I think he very much has a lot of potential to move up here, you know, maybe next year, but as of right now, I'm going to put him in the same tier with Ingram in the all-star category. Where he has really developed is on the defensive end. Him and Jaylen Brown, they've really just become this like 2-man force on defense that like nobody really saw, because we really saw Tatum come into the league as just like an offensive minded guy, but he's really grown his game as well. Like I said, these two guys, Ingram and Tatum, definitely could move up to all NBA as soon as next year. Tim Hardaway is a guy that can be a solid starter for you. We've seen what he is in Dallas, kind of that third go-to guy outside of Luka and KP, so that's why I went in there for me. TJ Warren has very much made the Suns regret trading him. He went in the starter category for me. He's just a guy that can absolutely score the ball, somebody that is just going to come in and be a solid starter for you, and Phoenix really gave him up for nothing, so that's why he's there for me. Tobias Harris is getting paid like a superstar, but he is not a superstar nor all NBA, maybe all-star, maybe. I think where he fits best is probably just a high-end starter, so that's where I'm going to throw him there. He's just a guy that very much overpaid. You know, we saw what he can do in LA with the Clippers, where he has kind of the ball in his hand and is a point forward, but you see what he can do in Philly, where he's just a spot-up shooter. And if we're just going based off this season, which I said, he's going to be in the high-end starter category for me. Tony Snell, he's going on the bench. For me, just a guy that you really, you know, he's a good 3-and-D player, but a guy that you really don't want to be your starting small forward if you're competing for a championship. Will Barton, he actually went in the starter category for me. I like Will Barton a lot. He's somebody that can come in, he can score the ball for you, he can play solid defense. He fits the Nuggets well. He's not a guy that really demands the ball as like a point forward that's like kind of like a Tatum or an Ingram. You give him an isolation play, he can get you a bucket. So that's why I went in starter for me. And then Duncan Robinson is somebody I got a lot of hate for in the shooting guard video. He went in the bench tier for me in the shooting guard video, but I'll bump him up to starter just because I think he's better than everybody in this bench tier and really has great fit alongside what they're building in Miami. And that's the video, guys. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next episode in this series, which will be me ranking power forwards using the same TierMaker.